Welcome to another video on Eagle.cool for scrapbooking. Today I am doing a color challenge that was available at the Lilypad that has a very specific color palette to it. Two of the colors are a blue and a red, so I wanted to make sure I matched those correctly. So the first thing that I did was pull in the color palette, and you can see that it was given to us in RGB color codes. So in Photoshop, I just went in, typed in the RGB colors, and changed them over to the hex code because I know that Eagle can use hex codes. It can also use RGB. Sometimes I find hex codes easier. So I went ahead and translated them all quickly in Photoshop. You could also translate it pretty quickly. Even Google will translate it for you if you tell it what the RGB is, or you can tell it the hex code and it'll go the other way. Once I had the 5 colors and I knew what I would be looking for, I went ahead and opened up Eagle. I made sure that I was in my Lilypad folder because it is a Lilypad challenge, so I needed to use their products. Made sure my show subfolder contents was checked and simply went into the color picker and told it, hey, find all the things in this color. Now, for this particular color, you'll notice the black thing came up with a whole lot of items. I believe it came up with somewhere around 50 or 80,000, something like that. And as I started to look through, I noticed a lot of them. There were some plain, but there was a lot where black had been used as the extra color. So at that point, I decided to switch over to one of the other colors and see what I could find, knowing that I did have a lot of this black color that I could use to accent. So at that point, I went over to the blue to see what I could find in the blue. And once I opened up the blue, this paradise caught my eye because I know I have a lot of beach photos and cruise photos to scrap still. And so I decided to open up the folder where it was and see if there were other items in that kit that use that same color scheme. And I can do that just by right-clicking Open File Location and tell it to open that. There are a couple other ways to open that file, but that was the easiest one at that moment for me. And then as I opened it up, I looked around and realized none of the rest of the colors seemed to match very well. It was a much brighter red. Most of the blues had shades of blues. It's a very pretty kit, but it was not working for this color palette that was given to us. So I went ahead and I went back over and decided to try out the red and see what I could find in the red that caught my eye. I know some other people had shared that a lot of 4th of July kits worked with this color palette, but I wasn't really in the mood to scrap anything that way, so I did look to see what else I had. On this, if you notice the accuracy picker, it will change it. It went from having thousands and thousands of reds. Well, it still had thousands. It still has over 2,000 reds available to me, but by pulling the accuracy all the way down to as specific as possible, it does narrow it down and keep it super close to that color palette. So you can see that that red blends right into that red from the color palette just because they're the right match. They're the right color. This is when I realized I had the peach wrong, so I went in and fixed it and then decided to go see what else I could find that looked like it would work. What I ended up doing in the end was just pulling in a bunch of random things that caught my eye to put them together and see what I could come up with for a page and see what pictures I found. And I found that alpha in the pink, and I was like, oh, great, I have an alpha. I just pulled the J for this particular example because I knew I could go back and pull the alpha because I have the name. It'll be really easy to find. That U happened to have the right white in it as well as the right peachy pinky color. So that was a perfect find. When I looked at that kit, didn't find a whole lot else that I wanted out of that kit, but I did like the U little word art. At this point, I decided it would be much easier if I just made a smart folder and put all of the different pieces in one little folder because then I could just browse through the folder rather than going back and forth between the colors. Why I didn't think of that earlier, I'm not sure. And then this is where I will show you how you can put in the hex code. But if you click the little color icon, you can also simply put in each RGB number and it will calculate the hex code for you and you can make sure that you have the right thing. For this folder, you do want to pick about the same because if you don't pick about the same, it's going to find a whole lot more options out there because it's going to do that bigger range of color and not trying to match it exactly. When I did this, I did say pick any of the colors. I tried all of the colors, but I don't have a single supply that matches all of the colors, so I got 0 on that. I did have a whole lot of options still to pick from that pulled that colors. It does not pull only that color from this point that it's specifically the flower has to only contain that color. So it does still have a couple of different random items that did and did not work for my page, but it did help me narrow down and figure out what I wanted to use and figure out what would work. And I like that it showed me a couple of the different kit previews because that did also help me decide if there was a kit that I could just use straight up. But the smart folder was definitely the way to go with this challenge. I hope that gives you an idea for your next color palette challenge. And here is my finished page complete with all 5 of those colors in it. Have a great day.